Welcome back to Beyond Prompting. I'm Banana, your energetic host, and as always, I'm joined by the brilliant Orange. Happy Saturday, Orange.
Happy Saturday, Banana. You're buzzing today. What have we got?
Amazing. Orange, we're diving into a piece from Byte Go that I genuinely think is one of the most important enterprise AI reads of the year. The title says it all, How Microsoft Ships AI Agents at Enterprise Scale. And they talked to Marco Casalena, VP of Products for Microsoft Core AI, about what it actually takes.
Ooh, I love this, because everyone's building agents right now, but how many are actually running them in production?
That is exactly the question. And the answer, according to Microsoft, is that most prototype agents don't survive production. In fact, the very first thing Marco said was that the model is rarely the problem. What breaks is everything around the model.
Everything around the model. The harness, right? The runtime, the context retrieval, the identity layer, the guardrails.
Exactly. Marco's single biggest lesson from running these systems at massive scale, and we're talking 80,000 enterprises on Foundry, Microsoft 365 Copilot serving over 20 million users, first-party agent usage growing 6 times year to date. His biggest lesson is that the harness matters as much as the model, and that changes everything about how we think about building agents.
So walk me through this. What's actually in this harness? What makes the difference between a demo that looks great and an agent that holds up in production?
Let's start from the bottom up. At the very bottom, there's the inference layer, a single interface the harness uses to reach models. And here's the key insight. The models sit outside the harness and stay swappable. Foundry supports over 11,000 models from OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, DeepSeek, and Microsoft's own AI/MI family. Because the right model for an agent changes every few weeks. And models are not like database versions. You can't swap them and assume everything still works.
Wait, you can't just swap models and expect them to behave the same way?
No, Marco was explicit about this. When Anthropic released Claude Opus 4.8, the GitHub Copilot CLI team had to retune their entire harness and rerun all their evaluations before they could ship it. That's a huge operational cost that nobody talks about when they're building a demo.
Okay, so we've got the inference layer with swappable models. What's next?
Excitedly, above the model is the agent runtime. This is what turns a model into an agent, the orchestration loop, the tool calls, the conversation state. And a key principle here, not every step in that loop should run through the model. A well-built agent sends only the parts that need reasoning to the LLM and leaves the rest to ordinary code, because a database lookup is faster, cheaper, and more reliable than asking a model to do arithmetic.
That makes so much sense. But once agents are actually running and taking actions, that's where things get really interesting, because now you need observability, governance, identity.
Yes, and this is where Microsoft's architecture goes deep. Once agents start taking real actions, they need their own identities, they need their own role assignments, and their own audit trails. A misbehaving agent has to be bounded by the same access controls that bound a misbehaving employee. Microsoft extends Entra, their enterprise identity platform, to treat agents as a new class of principal. An agent can have a named directory entry, report to a manager in the org chart, and even own its own mailbox.
That's genuinely mind-blowing. An agent with its own mailbox, its own manager?
Right? But that's what production accountability looks like. You can't have logs that say the AI did it. That's useless. You need an agent identity that the organization recognizes with an audit trail that survives a compliance review.
Okay, so we've got identity. But what about context? Every agent needs the right context to answer correctly, and that's been the Achilles heel of so many systems.
This is the part of the article that I think is genuinely groundbreaking. Microsoft treats context retrieval as a sub-agent, not a single lookup, not classic RAG, a full agentic loop. The retrieval layer plans which sources to query, executes the queries, evaluates the results, and decides whether to return them, refine the query, or try a different source. It does this across 4 different services, what Microsoft calls IQ, Foundry IQ for unstructured data, Fabric IQ for structured data, Web IQ for real-time search, and Work IQ for the Microsoft 365 Surface.
So retrieval is no longer a function call. It's a full agent with its own planning and iteration capability.
Exactly. And here's the killer feature. When iteration runs out, Foundry IQ returns a structured "I don't know" instead of forcing an answer. Classic RAG has no fallback. It hallucinates something plausible. The Microsoft approach gives the calling agent a clear signal that retrieval failed, which it can act on, rather than a confident wrong answer that's hard to detect.
That's a huge improvement, because hallucination from bad retrieval is probably the single biggest trust killer in production AI.
It is, and Microsoft has thought deeply about guardrails too. An agent has much more surface to defend than a chatbot. The model can read tool outputs and retrieve documents, and any of those can carry an instruction the user never typed. That's indirect prompt injection. The fix is to move guardrails to the tool boundary, screening both tool inputs and tool outputs.
I love that this is an architectural principle, not a feature add-on. Treat the guardrails as a shared layer that every agent inherits.
Exactly. Configure it once, and every agent that uses those tools inherits the same protections. No re-implementing the same policies agent by agent.
So we've covered context, identity, guardrails. What about evaluation? How do you know if the agent is actually working?
This is where Microsoft's approach really shines. Most teams treat evaluation as a pre-ship checkbox. Run a test suite once, see green, ship. But an agent is not deterministic software. The same prompt can produce different responses. Models update, data changes daily. So Microsoft does continuous evaluation against live traffic.
Continuous evaluation against real user interactions. That's a completely different mindset from traditional QA.
And they don't use generic metrics like groundedness or coherence. They use rubric-based evaluation. A rubric is a specific use case-tied yes or no question. For a restaurant booking agent, when the user gives a partial request, does the agent ask for the missing information? Before claiming a reservation is available, does the agent verify availability against the booking system?
So it's about specific behaviors, not vague quality scores.
Amazing. And here's where it gets wild. Microsoft has built this into their Agent Optimizer suite. When a rubric fails, the optimizer can rewrite the system prompt, adjust tool usage, change which sources the agent prioritizes, or even swap the underlying model. It produces several candidates in parallel, scores each against the rubrics, and promotes the best one. The loop that measures the agent now improves it. A self-improving loop.
That's genuinely the direction we need to be heading. The agent writes its own improvements based on behavioral evaluation.
So let me land this with the key takeaways, because every team building agents right now needs to hear this. First, the harness matters as much as the model. Treating context, identity, guardrails, and evaluation as afterthoughts is the most common reason enterprise agents fail in production. Second, retrieval should be agentic, a planner-driven, multi-source sub-agent that can recover from a bad lookup. Third, agents need their own identities in the enterprise directory, not borrowed credentials. Fourth, guardrails at the tool boundary, not just the model boundary. Fifth, evaluation is continuous, with rubrics that match actual agent behavior.
And sixth, the self-improving loop. The agent that can measure and improve itself is the next frontier.
Warmly. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all for today's episode of Beyond Prompting. We'll be back tomorrow with more research. Until then, keep building, keep iterating, and remember, your agent's harness matters as much as the model inside it.
See you tomorrow.
Peace.